Hi, I'm Trevor Hall, the founder of Comeback. Welcome to the Recovery Room, where we talk about sport, psychology, injury recovery, and a bit of everything. Welcome back to the Recovery Room. I'm here with Annika Larson,
Thanks, Trevor.
TV anchor extraordinaire,
And
famous journalist.
you're very good at telling me what I am. What are you?
I'm a counseling psychologist and ex-professional athlete.
And that is why Comeback has been formed by you and is something that you're passionate about and that you really know what you're talking about. And just to recap, it's a program for an online program for athletes or people who are really passionate about exercise and sport who've been injured, and to help the recovery process in a meaningful way.
In a nutshell, good summary.
Thank you. I thought it was quite good.
Yes.
Let's just go into, first of all, who is eligible for Comeback?
So any sports person, professional, amateur, active person, sports enthusiast, exercise enthusiast, between the ages of 15 and I would say 45. There's no limit on the age. I mean, anyone can do it really sort of over the age of 15. Who has been injured, you know.
Because being injured leaves such a vacuum in one's life, and a lot of people don't know what to do with that space, psychologically and just in terms of their general day.
Exactly. Being injured leaves a massive gap in terms of how to fill one's day. And like I said to you on the previous episode of this podcast, a lot of professional athletes and even amateur athletes, studies have shown that during injury recovery processes and whatnot, the amount of alcohol consumption, drug consumption, and issues of eating increase as well. So what Comeback, hopefully, I mean, I've got no data to prove this at the moment, but it makes logical sense, is that, you know, if these injured athletes or people who are injured have something to do that's meaningful, during the injury time, it could help lessen those
Stresses.
Well, the stressful effects of their injury. Yeah.
In terms of Comeback being, it's not a replacement for therapy. No. I think it's important that we make that clear.
It can augment therapy. So, for example, with this particular population. So, for example, I see quite a few athletes who have been injured for therapy for their injury recovery, and also other life issues and whatnot. But they're all on the Comeback program as well. So it gives them something it often gives them something to bring also to the therapy space. So in the beginning as well, it's a conversational piece and whatnot. And it's actually interesting because the therapies that I engage in with these athletes, after the first sort of session or two, the first couple of weeks, we don't really talk about Comeback anymore. Then we sort of get stuck into the kind of nuts and bolts of their lives and what's happening and whatnot. But the first couple of sessions is always around Comeback and what's how they're doing in the program, what their trackers are like, and all of these things. It's like a sort of buffer to the conversation.
So it's a 6-week program.
6-week program.
And it includes, and I've looked at the program and done some of the tasks, things such as, which I didn't expect, journaling and meditation, which for an A-type personality like myself or somebody who's always on the go, I found quite challenging, but another discipline that's really been helpful. And I'm not a professional athlete. I'm just somebody who was trying out the program. So talk me through the steps of the program.
So as I said in the previous episodes of this podcast, you've got when someone gets injured, they go through these phases of injury recovery. So you get the information processing stage or initial reaction stage, the emotional upheaval stage or emotional reaction stage, and then the positive outlook stage or subsequent reactions. Okay, and these things have been replicated in studies quite a bit. So you go through these kind of these phases of recovering after an injury. So the first phase, the information processing stage, that's probably one of the most important stages of the injury recovery process. Because if you can get the injured athlete or the injured person to find out exactly what's happened to them, to cut through all the clutter and the confusion and the uncertainty, etc., that can set them up for a much more effective healing process, because they will be able to find what they can expect, which will enable them to have realistic goals to be set, and then therefore put a plan in place to actually achieve those goals. So that's an incredibly important stage of the injury recovery process. And so what the comeback program encourages the person to do is to go and speak to whoever they trust, their medical professionals, people who have had an injury like theirs before, search the internet for information on their diagnosis, and basically gather as much information as they possibly can to find or formulate their own idea of what's actually happened to them. And what that will do is it normally gives them a sense of safety and control over their future.
Control is the important part for me, because
yes,
when you're injured, some of your control has been taken away from you.
Yeah, you got not no control, but much less control than you would have had. Yeah.
And you were saying that leads to sometimes a sense of grief too.
It can.
As well as a loss of control. So getting that realistic goal and control back, for me, I think would be very important.
It's vitally important. It just helps you cut through the clutter, think about it. I'm sure you've also been in situations before where you were uncertain about the future, or uncertain about what's going to happen tomorrow, or what the future holds. Often, and that causes anxiety. Anxiety is very much a future-directed mental distress. Depression is a lot more past-focused.
Okay, that's interesting.
If you think about it that way.
Okay.
Worry and that sort of thing, stress about it's always future. I got to do this, I should do that. What's going to happen if A happens? What's going to happen if B happens? If I screw that up, oh my gosh, all the consequences and everything. And that's where you get to this rumination. Okay, but what happens is, if you can name what it is that you're actually afraid of happening, if you can really name it, and you can name where you're at now you've got some sort of trajectory. You can set targets. You can go, okay, cool. So I've got all of these uncertainties, but I know where I am now. I know that my knee it has been diagnosed as for example, a medial collateral ligament tear. I've had an MRI on it, or it's been tested. The protocols, my doctor said, who I trust, says it's going to take me 6 months. And he broke it down into month 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I understand what's in front of me. Now I don't have to have that anxiety that comes with the uncertainty of all the things that could happen if I didn't know what this diagnosis was, and the prognosis. So the first task of comeback is to find out exactly as much information as you possibly can about your injury diagnosis and its prognosis, and also what the person can expect emotionally, physically as well. So one of the tasks is to actually go out and meet someone and talk to them, someone who has had an injury or similar injury.
Is that under social connection?
No, that's under information gathering. Okay, but it's got a social connection bent to it as well. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Something I find with information gathering is, and I've done this with my mom when she was diagnosed with cancer, is twice. So the first time it happened, none of us really took in what the doctor was saying. We were all kind of confused and we didn't really understand what was going on. And the second time it happened, I took a pen and paper with me so that I could write down and I could look back on those notes and what he'd actually said. And then it was a lot clearer to us about what actually was going to happen. And, because at that time you're so stressed, you're thinking about a million different things. So information gathering makes absolute sense. Yeah. Step 2, social connection.
So the social connection tasks, like I said in episode 1 and 2 of this podcast, we know that people who feel socially supported, first of all, they normally perform better, sports-wise, exercise-wise, and during injury recovery processes, they seem to heal more effectively.
Okay. Why is that?
Experiencing social support is a protective factor against stress.
Okay.
So remember I explained to you, the scenario of the tiger with, in the bush if you were a cave woman and having to go and hit someone over the head for food, or that's the other way around.
Sure, no problem. Yeah.
But and you encounter tiger. So now if you were in a group, how would you feel?
I'd feel a lot safer.
Exactly. Okay. So there's a shared burden of life, etc. With when you have people around you, it creates a sense of safety. Of I'm in this terrible situation, but I'm not here completely on my own. So now, what's interesting about this as well is that there have been again many studies done on the effects of forced isolation on people and isolation in general. And I think if I recall I don't want to speak out of turn here, but the takeaway that I had was forced isolation. If you force somebody into isolation for an extended period of time, okay, that person will release as much cortisol into their body as they would if they were basically punched in the face.
Really?
So that's the amount of stress that a person can be subjected to from being isolated from others.
No wonder we felt so awful during COVID.
It was, yeah.
I mean, when we were forced to be on one's own, and as I said to you earlier, sit there lying, looking at the ceiling after, one felt pretty grim after the whole experience, not just physically, but psychologically.
In fact.
Yeah.
So it's
social connection.
So
really
social
important.
connection seemingly lessens that, or not seemingly, it does. It lessens your susceptibility to, not the susceptibility, that's not right.
Okay.
It lessens the potential to be stressed because there's some sort of shared burden of life when you're around other people. If I'm really dealing with something, traumatic or difficult or whatnot, I can come and say, geez, I'm not feeling good, and you might say, okay, well, talk to me about it. And you might even say, sheesh, that sounds terrible. And it reminds me of something that happened with me. And, I've also experienced this. And suddenly in that exchange, there's some sort of realization at a really deep level about I'm not alone. I'm not alone in this.
Yeah.
I'm not the only person who's ever experienced this. There are ways out of it. And I can rely on somebody to help me through this.
Is it stereotypical to have the conception, perhaps misconception, that a lot of male professional athletes bottle things up and don't like sharing stuff? Or is that old-fashioned?
No, I think I think there are certain stereotypes at play. I think guys, generally speaking, we're a lot more overtly competitive with each other than women are.
Going into the cave, quietly into the cave.
Yeah, and also, we don't want to, to admit that, we need help or something it can be difficult because there is a competitive nature between guys as well. But that doesn't mean that guys don't support each other.
Okay.
Guys do form very, very close bonds. And in professional sports especially, the bonds that you form with your teammates and whatnot, they can be very, very strong. I think that just generally speaking, and I think maybe this is just a difference between men and women, is that generally speaking, although there are a lot of similarities.
People will shout at us if we don't put that disclaimer in because...
No, look, I think it's evident, there are differences between men and women, and I think they're more at the extremes than anywhere else. But in terms of how men seek social support, it is a little bit different to how women do it, I think.
Okay.
And
we can discuss that sometime because that's interesting.
Oh, yeah, we can definitely.
Yeah.
But again, it doesn't mean to say that guys don't look for social support. We do. It's just that we I think it's hard sometimes, especially in that sporting arenas and whatnot, to actually admit that you need support. And what's interesting about that as well, and this is just a little bit off the topic, but I read a study quite a couple of years back about, it was a study on Fortune 500 company CEO, Exco, basically across these Fortune 500 companies. And they were looking at what skills these people seem to have, men and women across the board, that made them so good at what they did in these Exco positions and whatnot. And one of the things that was common across all of them was that all of them at some point in their life manifested the skill of being able to ask the right person for the right help at the right time. So all of them had some sort of mentorship. They sought out mentorship from someone else. They asked for support, and not just some random person. That it was pointed. They went to this person. They said, you seem to know what you're doing. I want to do this too. Can you help me? Let's get going, and form some sort of mentorship relationship. And one of the things that come back in the social connection tasks encourages the participant or the person doing the course to do is to seek out people, a couple of people. I think there are 3 different tasks. To seek the person out of their choice, and then to ask them very specific questions to guide them through a conversation that's a little bit somewhat different to a normal just chat.
Why 6 weeks for the program?
6 weeks is it's your sort of average time of severe injury recovery. So, obviously there are going to be injuries that are going to take much longer than 6 weeks, and there are going to be injuries that take much shorter than 6 weeks. But 6 weeks seems to be the kind of average time for ligaments and tendons and whatnot to heal enough, and soft tissue at least, to heal enough for the person to be a little bit more mobile than they were. And that should take them into that last positive outlook stage of injury recovery. So they're a bit more mobile. They're not as dependent on people. They've kind of made sense out of the emotions that they've gotten, and that's enough for them to sort of go forward, with their own devices.
Talk to me about journaling and meditation as part of the program.
So journaling, the literature with journaling is astounding. It's, and more we're realizing that people who write carefully about themselves, they write about themselves from a structured or unstructured approach, seem to actually do better in life than those who don't.
Why?
It's something to do with being able to order your thoughts. So why do you do a master's dissertation or PhD?
That, Trevor, I cannot answer you, I'm afraid. You'll have to answer that.
I'll answer it in part. A master's dissertation, a PhD. And look, there might be some people who disagree with me, but that's fine. You get to choose normally the topic that a PhD definitely, you choose a topic that I don't have a PhD, it's on its way. Eventually in the next maybe 20 years or so.
Okay, good luck.
But the principles are the same. So you choose a topic. You're forced to go and research. You've got to gather all this information. You've got to research stuff. You've got to do a literature review. You've got to do all of this stuff. So you're learning you're learning about the subject that you're interested in. But most people who choose to do something already know quite a bit about that subject. So what's the use of a PhD? What the use is that you've got to take all of that information, an overwhelming amount of information. And this is also for master's dissertation or honors project or whatnot.
Okay.
University in general. You've got to take all of this information and somehow you've got to put it together and make sense out of it. You have to write it tightly so that it makes sense not only to you, but to other people, to supervisors, to people who are going to read it. It's an incredibly intense, hardcore process of learning how to order your thoughts, learning how to think in a very sort of sequential, strategic, hierarchical way.
Do you structure the journaling in the program?
So in the program, it's certainly not a PhD, so I'm not scaring people off. Okay.
No, I've looked at it and it's fine. I've managed it, so we're good.
The journaling prompts, etc., are very easy to follow. They're very chilled. They're very injury specific. They're in fact quite fun to do. But they're structured. So each journaling task will take you through a stage of your injury recovery process, and it'll ask you questions. It'll prompt you to write about certain experiences that you've had.
Okay.
There's some goal-setting stuff in there. There's some future-directed stuff. There's some past-directed stuff. There's some present coalescing stuff as well. So you get, I think it's 5 journaling prompts per week. So 30 different journaling prompts.
So that was quite a lot.
Yeah, and you do it all online. You don't need a pen and paper or anything.
Yeah.
It's all actually on the program. Yeah.
Meditation?
The meditations also, the research on meditation and how it helps people with stress and anxiety, and I'm not too sure about depression that much, but stress and anxiety, all forms of meditation seem to be very, very effective in treating these things. So in the comeback meditations, I wrote all of the scripts. I think there are 4 guided meditations that you have.
Yeah, I've done 2.
3 visualizations and 2 mindfulness tracks. And then there are some music tracks to help you sleep, recorded at 432 hertz, and then some other focus tracks at 40 hertz.
Put a lot of time and effort into this program.
No, it's been a process. Yeah.
How long has it taken you to actually formulate from start to finish?
Look, I mean, it was based on the recovery mastery group that I designed and implemented at that professional team up in Johannesburg. I wrote a paper on that was published in the South African Journal of Sports Medicine. And then what happened, so that was about a year's worth. And then I took that model and I converted it, but really to what comeback is today. And then that took about a year and a half to develop. Yeah.
Wow, okay. Just in terms of the 6-week program and the tracking, how does that work?
So the tracking, the tracking serves 2 issues. So first of all, it tracks your energy levels, how relaxed you are, and energy, relaxation, and how much and how happy you are. Okay, so happy, sad, relaxed, not relaxed, or stressed, energized, not energized. That gives you a very good idea of where your mood might be. Okay, your general mood. It's not a diagnostic tool. You don't use it to diagnose anything. I want to make that very clear. So you track those 3 factors for mood. Then it tracks your levels of motivation, pain, and sleep. So all of that. So as soon as you think to yourself, I need to put a value for how motivated I am today. So you track a value between 1 and 9. As soon as you got to think, you think to yourself, well, how motivated am I today? You got to sit back and you got to think, okay, well, how motivated am I today? And as soon as you ask yourself a question like that, there's a burgeoning self-awareness.
What if you're really feeling like you're having a shitty day?
But then that's what you put down. So you put, my energy levels are low, I'm sad, I'm unmotivated, I have a lot of pain, I didn't sleep well.
Okay.
Now, if your tracker chart is showing that you are sort of between 1 and 9, and for a week or 2 weeks you see all of those values really low, that's something that can alert you to, okay, well, maybe there's something else going on here. I need to go and actually speak to somebody about this. Maybe I need to go and chat to a family member about it, a friend. Maybe I need to go see a psychotherapist or my doctor.
Okay.
It will indicate that something's not where it should be. If my pain levels are sort of 8 out of 9 for 6 or 4 weeks in a row, there's something wrong. It shouldn't be that way. So it gives you a really good idea of where you're at in your recovery program. And it also, the process of tracking starts to introduce you to what it means to become self-aware.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you talk about we can monitor perhaps pain levels between just say 1 to 10, but it's not as easy for us to track our mental health levels as easily, or for us to self-diagnose that. It's a lot harder.
A lot harder. A lot harder. And unless you consciously and deliberately do it, it doesn't normally get done. Like I said, we're normally living in the future. Everything's performance. Everything's, what do I have to do to get better? What do I have to do to be the best or compete or whatnot? And when one's living in the future like that, there's very little time to actually sit back and think, okay, but how am I doing? What have I done? You get those serotonin pathways going and whatnot, and reward yourself a little bit for, actually, I got through a day of quite hard rehabilitation today.
Okay.
Give myself a little gold star.
Lord. What is rumination? We were talking about it in episode 3.
Rumination is when you think about something over and over again. If you think about, so rumination can also mean chewing. So to ruminate, so cows ruminate.
Yes,
they,
that's right.
They sort of chew the cud in that way, So it's a kind of mental chewing that you go over and over about the same thing.
And that can happen to athletes who, I suppose, catastrophize in a way. Just
very much so.
What if I don't get better? What if this happens? And this is part of trying to bring back some of that control. And that's in all the programs: the mindfulness, the visualization, etc.
Yeah, the meditations, especially. It's to break that cycle where you go on this mind journey. Those guided meditations, especially, I don't know how you found them, but the feedback that we've been getting is that they've been very, very, very powerful.
They've been very powerful, and they weren't difficult to do because I didn't feel stressed about having to make sure that I was doing them properly. I just had myself and the meditation there. I wasn't in a group and sort of being forced to, I did not think about something else. I just managed to bring myself back. And do it. So I thought they were very good.
Cool, I'm glad.
Trevor, just in terms of, now we've talked about comeback and the podcast series will continue. What sort of topics are you going to be discussing next? I know you've got some interesting guests lined up.
Yeah, so we've got, we've called it the recovery room. So it is although this is an introduction to comeback, because obviously we want people to be, we want people to know about the program and not just the program, but also psychotherapy and what that can do. Because really, at the heart of it, I'm a therapist. It's really where my passion lies. I like therapy. I like being a therapist. I'm interested in relationships and human connection, and what it means to be a human being. Although that I don't think will ever be answered. But so the Recovery Room podcast, we're going to try and get a wide variety of people, from sports people, doctors, physiotherapists, ex-professional players, people who have had extraordinary things happen with them. Anyone really who just fits the mold of sports, psychology, medicine, injury recovery, anything and the like.
Okay, I can't wait to listen to the rest. And it's an amazing program, and I just love hearing about psychology, and being a guest here with you means I've just had a free dose of it. So thank you so much for letting me sit in your recovery room with you.
No, it's my pleasure. And Annika, thank you so much for coming on. I've really enjoyed having you here. And I'm just getting warmed up. So
well, I'm always here. I'm fascinated. I'm here to chat. And if I'm not talking to you, I'll be listening to the podcast. So.
No, that's so great. Thanks so much, Annika. Thanks again. And good luck with your stuff as well.
Thank you.
I'll be watching on the NCA.
Thanks.